Mixtape is joyful homage to angsty coming-of-age stories like The Breakfast Club or Reality Bites, crossed with the music-led narration of something like High Fidelity. Those films and or books were made to give voice to the confusion of youth. Those works, and those like them, were awkwardly asking awkward questions and arriving at awkward answers because, asked in that moment, everyone was still figuring it out. They were earnest explorations of a confusing time. Mixtape is different. It's not feeling its way through confusion, and there's no awkwardness to it.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Back to the grind of catching up on stories I postponed. Today we're going to be diving into some stuff we briefly touched on before, including Tim Cain, influencers, streamers, games media, games like Mixtape, the Fallout community, so on and so forth. It's going to be a long one, it's a response, so I don't know, get some iced tea and kick back. Nice. So a few weeks ago, Tim Cain, one of the creators of Fallout who now makes videos discussing game development and the industry, made this video titled How the Internet Changed Game Design. In it, he answers a question from one of his viewers and discusses a lot of the things that we're going to be getting into in this video. But what's more interesting about it is how it was perceived and twisted by games media and how beautifully it plays into what happened with Mixtape just a few days after Tim Cain's video. See, we're going to go over his video bit by bit and respond to some things, and it's really funny how he uploaded this on May 1st and Mixtape released on May 7th, which went on to show just how bad the games media apparatus is, which in a way he defends in this video in opposition to influencer culture, content creator culture, whatever you'd like to call it. But of course at the same time, funnily enough, the Mixtape situation also proves Tim Cain right in how bad influencer culture is. It's a really interesting situation and one that I'm finally glad to be dedicating a video to. The main reason why this became a controversy, where you might have seen some other content creators making potentially angry tweets or videos directed at Tim for, was actually because of games media outlets like DiGCliff. Not all games media outlets did this kind of thing, but some did. Where they took Tim Cain's words, it's a mostly innocent video to be honest with you. It's not perfect, he does get some things wrong. For example, in it, he says this.
Differently than journalists. Journalists would frequently say, look at the game, look at the features, and it supports this, and it's very similar to this game, and blah, blah, blah. Journalists were at least, I think, sometimes trying to be objective. I don't think there's any objectivity. I mean, influencers themselves go, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, or I'm here for the hardcore.
That's pretty bad. But we'll get to that later and respond. So they took all this and they framed it in a much more hostile way than he intended, with clickbait posts like this going, Fallout co-creator Tim Cain believes gaming fans often adopt streamers' opinions instead of forming their own. Quote, they're handed an opinion from the channel they're watching and then that person's opinion becomes their own. It comes across like a bit of a jab, like you're morons who can't think for yourselves, or like there's anything wrong with you guys watching a video from a YouTuber you like and doing the egregious thing of merely agreeing with what they have to say. But if you watch the full video, you would see that it really wasn't the vibe that Tim was going for. There's stuff you can disagree with for sure, and we will in just a bit, but there's no hostility there. A lot of what Tim said was even accurate, just poorly framed. It basically allows people to apply it to whatever faction they hate. You can take his video and you can be like, ah yeah, Tim Cain's right, he's talking about how bad the Shills are. Or you can be like, ah yeah, Tim Cain's right, he's talking about how bad the Grifters are. Tim was too vague. He didn't specify things and he didn't explore the topic. And DiGCliff's framing is hostile to content creators and those who watch them, because DiGCliff is a games journalism outlet and games journalism is dying out with no one else to blame but themselves. They hate the free market of opinions. They want to be the only ones who can influence you on buying or ignoring a game, and they hate that nowadays anyone, including you watching right now, can record some footage of the games that you play, buy a dollar store microphone, make a pop filter out of an old sock, and make your own videos and reviews that drives traffic away from their websites. That's how I started in September of 2024, and now, nearly 33,000 subscribers later, here we are. And it's thanks to this environment, this ecosystem where anyone can give it a shot, and it's thanks to you guys that we make it. Rather than being dependent on the games industry to sustain us with early access privileges, review codes, invitations, sponsorships, event previews, goodie bags, so on and so so forth. In other words, hoes mad, so of course they took the original video from Tim Cain and applied it to us, even when so much of it applies to them too. So let's get in there. So Tim's video is really scattered. I wish he would just script these so we could get much more insight and a better structure, but it is what it is. It just means that I'm going to have to work overtime on the response. We're going to be having 2 chapters here. One is covering the pre-influencer era yapping, and then the post-influencer response. The pre-influencer yapping is stuff that I'm not going to fully cover because there's really not much to respond there. The second part is where the cheese is at, so feel free to skip to that timestamp if you want. In this part right here, I'm going to go through the most important things that he said and respond to them. It's mostly to do with the timeline. You'll get it as we go along. Let's just start. It all began with this question.
Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about how the internet changed game design. This is from a question from Padoni Rosso. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right. How did your thought process in designing and making games change, or maybe what adaptations did you see in general in making games by the industry around you with the advent of social media and video game streamers? To what extent and how do developers and or publishers keep in mind how streamable are their current projects in development? I'm sure that video game streaming cannot be ignored as a sort of mostly free commercial and promotion circuit for a modern day game. So how do you guys manage this change from what making and selling games was only 10 to 20 years ago?
So in other words, how has streaming and streaming culture changed the way game developers make and market their games? Ideally, the answer here would have been, it hasn't. We don't give a shit about streamers. But sadly, this isn't the case. Too much attention is given to them and it has resulted in often really stupid decisions like trend chasing. Like back when battle royales were being shoved into every game. Call of Duty, here's a battle royale mode. Fallout 76, let's put a battle royale in it. Counter-Strike, shove it in there too. World of Warcraft, why not? Jam it right in. All that was left really was putting that shit into Bubsy 3D or something. Last year, we even had streamers melting down over Battlefield 6 not having a battle royale at launch. And of course, the same trend-chasing curse happens in extraction shooters as well. These companies see Burnt Peanut get a gazillion views playing Arc Raiders, and they go, oh my god, all the kids love extraction shooters. Let's make an extraction shooter too. But anyway, back to Tim Cain. This central point of the question was kind of lost along the way and switched to influencers and how people listen to them instead of making their own decisions. And that sucks because I think we really lost a lot of the discussion in there when we just, funneled everything down to influencers when there's such a big spectrum of influencer types out there. I'd say this is actually one of 2 major problems in Tim Cain's video. I'll tell you the second when we get to it. This one is in regards to how Tim doesn't do much to distinguish between influencers and streamers, or influencers and other content creators such as YouTubers, or vice versa. And he should have, because these are all very different people. Streamers, for example, shouldn't be listened to because the way that they engage with games is very different from how players play them. Streamers need constant action, constant excitement, constant shit happening on the screen so that the stream is always, running at a high note. So they play shooters, big, hyped mainstream releases, at least for a while until they get bored. And for example, horror games that always get great reactions, or Souls-likes. But good luck getting these people to play something like Atomfall or Metal Garden or slower RPGs. Either they get bored because when they're playing these games, it doesn't matter the quality of the game, it only matters the entertainment value that it is providing as a watchable thing for the viewer, or the viewers themselves get bored and start dropping off, and then they look at the view counter, they notice the decline in comparison to when they were playing, Call of Duty Black Ops 53, and they abandon the games, calling them boring. Streamers can't even be listened to within their own niche, and I think streamers like Cloud show this perfectly when it comes to extraction shooters. They play the games for like 16 hours a day, while the average casual player doesn't clock in half of that. So by the time that they are calling the game boring or dead because there's no more content, the average fella isn't even halfway there yet. If a developer listens to them, they are getting faulty data. Influencers, on the other hand, are just billboards. They're fake. They're given money to shill a game, not much depth to be offered there. there. Very superficial commentary and soy jack reactions to big hype moments in trailers or in the first hour of gameplay. Then they move on to the next thing. YouTubers are a whole spectrum. Some of them will be positive towards games, others will be negative. Hell, some, it doesn't even matter. It's neutral or it just doesn't exist. It's not part of their content. It's just funny videos or playthroughs or guides or whatever else. And sadly, some of them fall off into the shill influencer side of things more and more these days with the advent of quote-unquote company ambassadorships, which is YouTubers that are directly tied to a company or a brand. And much like it happens for games media outlets, these content creators get sent early codes, goodie bags, etc. to make content about the game in a positive light. You can't expect honesty or critical content from these types either because they can't speak ill of the games. If they do, the shill status is removed and the company doesn't send them anything anymore. Tim Cain then spends 5 minutes of the video talking about how things used to be before the internet and how things were when the internet was new. How, for example, before it, they didn't really care. They just made the games that they wanted to make, and there were even very little labels for the games. Genre categories weren't exactly as established as they are now. You kind of figured out what the game was by playing it or by looking at the back of the box. Games relied on word of mouth to sell more copies, and at best, we just had printed media like magazines to give a snippet of what a game was like. But then with the internet becoming more popular, guides and walkthroughs began to pop up, which changed the way he designed his games to an extent. Here's the clip.
All of that started changing in the late 90s and the 2000s. The internet became insanely popular. It came from being something that I used academically to suddenly all my friends were talking about it. All my friends were using it and they were very excited about it. And they were like, did you know about email? Yeah, I've been using email for a decade. But now everybody has email and everyone's getting email addresses. The internet got so popular that people could easily find a guide to any game they wanted to play online. What this affected what I did is I was starting to become more, it was more possible for me to have a say in what I wanted to make. I wasn't making games because other people said, here's what we're making this year. But people were like, well, hey, what do you want to make? And I put together some engines. So I started making my games more complex, which subsequently made walkthroughs harder to define. I mean, what kind of character did you make? What choices did you make as you were playing? These all affected the walkthroughs. I remember when somebody asked me what I imagined the walkthrough for Fallout was going to be like, and I'm like, it can be really different. You don't have to go to these places in any particular order, and depending on what kind of character you're making, some of them are easier, some of them are harder, and what you do in those locations will be different. So that was fun to me.
I found it interesting how some developers out there might have looked at guides and walkthroughs being made and just went like, you think it's some kind of wise guy, huh? I'm gonna make a more complex game, see? After this, Tim goes into YouTube. I'll just play the clip and go over it afterwards because I have a lot of things to point out.
Then starting, I'm gonna say YouTube, which was February 2005. At that point, videos became very easy for people to share. Playthroughs were really easy to make and share and easy to find, which meant people could just watch a game being played and decide if that's what a game they wanted to buy. And if they were ever stuck, they could just look up a playthrough, sometimes a playthrough of just that one spot they were stuck in. This trivialized puzzles because you could just type, Fallout Master how to kill, and it would just lay it out. There'd be a video. Here's what you do. Are you good at combat? Do this. Do you have this particular armor or weapons? Do this. Or do you have speech? Do this. Do you have stealth? Do this. Nobody had to figure it out. They could just look it up.
The early YouTube days weren't exactly like this. I think he's getting the timeline a bit mixed up here. Around this time, I think most people still looked at the back of the box. I know I did. Some of you guys watching might not be able to relate to me on this, but I only ever got a laptop with internet in like 2008, 2009 maybe, and all I watched was brain rot. This is where you may not relate because some of you may be American and older than me, for example, so maybe you'll have had internet earlier than I did. Besides, none of this really changes how YouTube itself was around these early years. Nowhere near the same amount of channels, nowhere near the same content variety, and God, I don't even remember any videos where I would click and be greeted with an annoying voice trying to sell me the damn game or tell me about all the cool loot and secret locations locations right off the get-go, like, hey guys, this is amazing game, I was just sent early copy to spoil the whole thing for you and show you what everything is. Like, no. You had the promotional videos from the publisher, then you had game journalist channels such as IGN who uploaded more high quality content, and then on the individual side you had gameplay videos that were often even recorded with a camera pointed at an old TV in the living room rather than actual gameplay capture devices. There was some variety like bugs, fail compilations, but nothing crazy. This is how it was in early YouTube. People didn't even make money from this, which is why if you're trying to make funny gaming videos, which were something that took off back then, you'd have to join a network such as Machinima, for example, to make money. Our boy from the Stop Killing Games initiative, Ross Scott, had a popular Machinima series which was a let's play of Half-Life called Freeman's Mind. It's hilarious and still holds up today. I binge watched that shit all the time back then. I'd get home from school and I'd be like, oh my god, I hope you uploaded another one. And I owe that series for teaching me quite a lot of English. My school teachers didn't teach me a goddamn thing of English. It was cartoons, video games, movies, and stuff on YouTube. I think it was only around PewDiePie's time that gaming content began getting monetized, which in turn meant the rise of more gaming content. Besides, I don't really have a problem with walkthroughs and guides existing. I think the problem here is overindulgence, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with the player getting stuck and trying to figure things out, fail, and then go look up a guide. The problem is game developers destroying difficulty in their games over time because of constantly worrying about people not knowing how to do a puzzle. Tim Cain mentions how the advent of playthroughs made puzzles obsolete.
And if they were ever stuck, they could just look up a playthrough. This trivialized puzzles.
I don't think so, because I still think most gamers would buy your game, play it, and try to figure things out for themselves before ever going for a playthrough or a guide. What made puzzles obsolete is the backwards idea that games must be for everyone. Everyone must be able to play them, including the lobotomites who cannot solve a simple puzzle because their IQ can be counted on one hand. That and the physically challenged players who actually can't control their hands at all. Thankfully, nowadays we're seeing advances in game accessibility where some of these problems are solved in menus where options exist to either turn off puzzles or skip them or rework them into something easier from the menu, which means the base game does not have to get impacted. The base game can still be difficult. But sadly, the damage has already been done culturally. And so even if games have these accessibility options for those who truly need them, they're still being designed to be easy and dumbed down enough to make sure that everyone can play them anyway, including the dumbasses. Pretty soon, I'm sure we'll be able to get a dog to play a new Assassin's Creed title from beginning to end, and that right there isn't the fault of YouTubers making playthroughs or guides, it's the fault of developers and publishers and oh, don't forget, game journalists for being pussies. Game developers are so afraid of their games not being widely marketable enough, right? Widely appealing, that they make their games to try and be that way, to try and be playable by as many people, to try and be appealing to as many people as possible, and they're not even noticing that that's damaging their games and causing the opposite effect, where it's just making their games be trash that blends in with everything else in the goddamn market, and that nobody finds worth the full price or even worth their time sometimes. Now, moving on from puzzles, there's something else that also gave rise to more gaming content on YouTube, and that was the utter failure of games media outlets at doing their jobs. This is the other part of why this video feels somewhat empty. Not disingenuous, like I don't think Tim Cain is being an asshole on purpose, but he barely touches on the problems with official games media coverage and the bias that comes from them. We'll get more to that later when he directly mentions it, but for now, back to the point. The failure of official games media to provide an unbiased service to gamers was a rising issue. People were noticing bad reviews, biased scoring, softball coverage and interviews. There were even big controversies about ethics even in the 2000s. All of this was bubbling up, and it didn't take long for gamers to take up the mantle themselves and make their own content on YouTube. Tim Cain will say this in just a little bit too.
Then the 2010s rolled around. And now those walkthroughs and videos online were starting to get replaced with influencers. I don't recall hearing the word influencer before the 2010s. What was interesting about these individuals is more than showing how to play games, they were actually recommending whether you should buy them or not.
We'll get to fully explore this part in just a second, but what I want to highlight here is that he's skipping a big part of all this and going straight to like 2017 or 2018. I think that's when we began seeing these type of influencers. I think they correlate with the rise of TikTok and that whole side of brain rot videos that have to be 1 minute max, otherwise the audience gets bored and swipes away. This, in my view, is a true age of the influencer, where you're not even getting anything of substance out of them. You're not getting a review, you're not getting a breakdown, you're not getting an exploration of the themes or anything else in that vein. You just have this person that you like telling you that they really like this product or are having a lot of fun with it. And it's all really to just artificially generate hype and engagement, whatever the fucking thing is called, SEO or whatever, get the name of your game out there. Everybody sees it now because there's like 50 of these... I almost said something bad. See, 50 of these parasites making various golly gee wilkers, this is the best game I've played all year. And it's like the same thing. Every goddamn game is the best game they've played all year. It's like, it's modern marketing. But anyway, that's the second half of 2010s, I believe. Throughout most of the 2010s, though, we had what I just described. Actual people who are passionate about games and wanted to make content out of them. Uncompromised reviews, casual, informal entertainment, and industry criticism that journals never touched on because their balls are compromised, and this was positively necessary for us because at the same time, game prices were going up and so were the amount of games in the market. So at this point, there was a huge necessity for reliable game coverage. Looking at the back of a box on the store is a very lovely, nostalgic thing, and I do miss it to an extent, but the truth is that it just wasn't enough. For $20 games, okay. But I remember, for example, when I bought my first Xbox 360 game, it was Red Dead Redemption. It cost 65 euros. At the time, that was a lot of money for me, and at this price point, looking at the back of the box did not cut it, so I went back home and I scoured YouTube and comment sections trying to figure out whether I should get it or not. There wasn't a lot in terms of coverage and I was still new to using the internet for video game related stuff, so I didn't have like a favorite YouTuber to go look at and trust, but I remember watching various videos to try and figure out if I should buy that or something else. And ironically, there was always a huge need for games journalism, but they fucked up. They lost our trust and they gave way to their own replacements via YouTube. But now let's focus on the main thing that Tim Cain's video is about. Past the 6-minute mark in this video, he says this.
Then the 2010s rolled around, and now those walkthroughs and videos online were starting to get replaced with influencers. I don't recall hearing the word influencer before the 2010s. What was interesting about these individuals is more than showing how to play games, they were actually recommending whether you should buy them or not. Differently than journalists. Journalists would frequently say, look at the game, look at the features, and it supports this, and it's very similar to this game, and blah, blah, blah. And then they'd finally give it we're going to give it an 8 out of 10 because it was a little buggy, but we liked it. Influencers did something different. They were like, here's a game, I love it, it's for you, and let me show, and then they'll show high points of it. Game print magazines, by the way, by the 2010s are already dying. And I think this killed them, because why wait for a review when someone you already followed could just tell you about the game and whether or not you should buy it?
Okay, so there's a few things I'd like to mention here. First, the game journalist thing. There really wasn't much of a difference between reviews from them and reviews from YouTubers. In fact, reviews from YouTubers ended up going into much more detail. They generally followed the same sort of line where they told you what the game was and how it feels to play it. The bigger difference probably was that YouTubers were YouTubers, you know what I mean? Were and still are, we're really just the audience. We're gamers. Generally speaking, we don't place ourselves above the gamers, and so that means that we are much more informal and accessible. It's like one of your bros telling you about a game that he really likes and why you should get it now, or maybe wait for a sale if it's not worth the full price, or to just completely avoid it if it's ass. Instead of the weird tone some official outlet reviewers have, where they place themselves above us or at times even take jabs. That's another thing that Tim doesn't take into account at all. He doesn't even mention it. It's how toxic games journalism became over the years. We have outlets that fill themselves up with activists who aren't even into video games the same way that we are and write hit pieces against fans of certain games, or worse, write weird hit pieces that are politically charged. Nobody wants to get lectured or nagged at, much less politically, much less by these people. And again, if we really are to talk about official outlets versus YouTubers, the official outlets absolutely do not make more detailed reviews than YouTubers, like it's not even close. This is why it's so annoying that there's zero distinction between, for example, some fuckboy on TikTok going, "Hey guys, I love the brand new Starfield video game, it's very good, there are like 1000 planets for you to visit." Well, sorry, fellas. Okay, so between that and then, like, I don't know, Mauler scripting a 5-hour breakdown of the story, quests, and pacing, or someone that I don't even watch anymore like Angry Joe, or so many others, putting a full hour or more to review many more aspects of such a big RPG like Starfield. And by the way, IGN's Starfield review, it's 12 minutes. So I don't know if this video ever reaches Tim Cain, but brother, please, man. The uncomfortable truth is that if you want depth, you go to YouTubers. If you want an unbiased source, you go to YouTubers. If you want a more personalized, relatable thing, you go to YouTubers. And on top of all this, some of us even throw humor on top for entertainment value. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start. Official outlet reviewers barely have time to finish the damn games, let alone make coverage that actually digs deep, especially into bigger games. And I understand that not everybody is going to want a 1 or 2 hour review to figure out if they want to buy the game. Most people are going to look for something shorter, like, hey, does the game work? Hey, how's the combat? Does it feel okay? You know, some people are skirting this line right here. And the beauty of content creation is that you have both. You got YouTubers going into the 2-3 hour territory and YouTubers doing it for 15 minutes or less. And I would still trust a YouTuber with a 12-minute video on Starfield over IGN's video on Starfield, because it's just the more you look into this industry, the games media industry, the more horror stories you'll hear. Either it's because of what I just said, where they literally do not have time to finish their own games, or it's because they employ activists who cannot play video games and so they get stuck, like the Cuphead guy, which became a monumental meme years ago already, or people who are brain rotted in the brain and look at a game like Black Myth Wukong and instead of reviewing it based on what the game is, start talking about politics and diversity. Miss me with that shit, I'll take the YouTuber every day of the week. The best news that game journalists ever got was probably this year when Bungie was like, please guys, can you please only review Marathon a month later when we finally are able to release our endgame thing? And the game journalists were probably like, oh my god, oh, thank God, dude. I haven't even touched the fucking game. I haven't even been able to play a single match. Oh my God. Thank God, a month to prepare a review. Thank God. Oh my goodness. Thank you. There's a lot of people that look at these for content, because these reviews, you know, the bigger ones, they obviously take a lot of time to get done, a lot of time to prepare. Most of us aren't even getting review codes to be able to do that and have those videos ready at launch, so it's not even that people are looking for an influencer to be there on day one with a 1-minute TikTok or YouTube Shorts video saying, hey, I like this, buy it, with only a couple of highlights. For some people, that may be enough, but what killed magazines? Well, shit, it's magazines. Ain't nobody going out to get a magazine, okay? it's 2020, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody gonna do that, you know? Even before then, I was certainly not going to go out to get a magazine. But what is killing the written medium, such as written reviews by official media outlets, isn't 1-minute videos on, on TikTok. It's just their disconnect with players. But that aspect of people taking your games and showing a bunch of stuff in them, going over details and then rating them based on the experience is thankfully still alive and well.
Publishers responded to this by sending copies of the game to influencers and online channels just as much as they did to game journalists. And that kind of changed things because the journalists were at least, I think, sometimes trying to be objective.
Probably shouldn't.
Look at his lips.
because the journalists were at least, I think, sometimes trying to be objective. I don't think there's any objectivity. I mean, influencers themselves go, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, or I'm here for the hardcore.
Sometimes, he says. I found that really funny. Like, even this guy who's trying to be as nice and neutral as possible can't avoid the fact that these motherfuckers are not objective. But that's not enough for me. Sorry, Tim, but I got a rant. Game journalists might have been trying to be objective like in the 90s or the early 2000s or something like that. I don't really have any personal information to give. It's before my time. But by the time publishers started sending out codes to YouTube channels and influencers, game journalism was already in the sewers. The truth is that there's not much difference between sending a code to a games journalist and sending a code to an influencer. They're both biased and rely on access. They rely on being sent these codes and invites by the publisher. The big difference between the two, I guess, would be length and function. Also, clout. If a big publisher sends a code to a game journalist, you can forget all about objectivity. But if smaller publishers or smaller studios, independents, send a code to game journalists, you might actually expect a little bit more of objectivity, as they will rate those games lower without thinking too much about it. I mean, sometimes the ratings are still too high for what they should be, but you can tell that they go for like the 6s and the 5s, where usually for a big AAA game, if it's bad, they're still not going to go lower than a 7, unless they have a vendetta against it like they had for Black Myth Wukong. But anyway, length and function. Length as in reviewers will stretch out their glaze sessions to like 15 minutes and TikTokers will get it done in 1 minute. And the function comes in the shape that a reviewer will be giving you some details about the game and how it plays, whereas a streamer will be playing it live and the value there will come from whether or not the streamer is enjoying himself. That is something that Tim Cain mentions right after on this part.
So many designers like myself, we frequently thought, well, how is a certain event in the game going to look like when someone's playing it live or recording themselves playing it to put up as a stream? We thought about cinematics, we thought about end bosses, we thought about unusual weapons you could get, and because of that, we wanted it to look really good in video. And that was one reason like particle effects became a big thing, because you just didn't want it to go boom. You wanted a big explosion and wanted it to be pretty and colorful and all these things, especially in a clip, because people will see that on some channel where someone's talking about the game and they see that clip and now they really want to play the game.
This is actually a perfect freeze frame for how I feel listening to this shit. The way Tim Cain looks here, where it's like he's just defeated and ready for the boat to come and take him to Valinor, yeah, that's how I feel knowing that for years now, executives and developers have been designing their games based on what retards react to in their streams. And yeah, years, because Tim has been retired for a while now. I hate this shit so much because it's literally a thing where it's not really forcing developers to make better games. It's just forcing developers to do intense key jingling in sections of their games so that hopefully when a streamer or an influencer makes a video on it or are playing it live, they can go and do this shit right here, right? This right here, become the soy jacks, which in turn results in their players going, oh, and then of course maybe it results in a few extra sales instead of, just making a terrific game with more focus on things that matter and let it get sold on merit. The problem though, of course, is the merit going to be enough if you don't jingle enough keys? See, there's so many games nowadays, there's so many of them, that of course every developer wants to stand out, and sometimes making a good game is just not enough. So is a good game going to be enough to keep streamers playing it so more of a spotlight is put on your game without the key jingling? Probably not. And so what's the result here? Well, it's Tim Cain's look. That right there, this is the result. We are boned, okay? We're boned. It's never going to get better. We're fucked. It is what it is.
I can't stand any of you dumb fucks in this goddamn chat. Oh my fucking god, I hate the left. I hate liberalism. I hate everything that's going on every single fucking day of the goddamn week. I hate my life. I hate fucking streaming. I hate socialism. I hate every single fucking person who thinks that the peak of activism is just being the most annoying, holier than thou, the most ultimately woke leftist. It's just, you did it. You did it. You have unlocked the fucking nihilism within me, okay? I am black-pilled. Nothing will ever get better. We are never gonna make it out. Everything that we do here is so bad. is so fucking bad.
And we just gotta get used to it. I am a huge fan of games like Kingdom Come Deliverance and Red Dead Redemption. You wanna know what TikTok-brained people call these games? They call it boring. You wanna know what they call fantastic older games like Deus Ex, Bioshock, Resident Evil 4 Original, Oblivion, etc.? They call it boomer slop or unk slop. This is what happens when the standards that you set is to appeal to key-jingling morons. But back to the previous point, game journalists and influencers have it in common that their takes are ultimately biased by access. It's not about objectivity at all. Most influencers that get codes are more than primed to be positive about games. It's only in rare cases that publishers gamble on certain massive influencers to send codes to where they're not certain if the feedback will be positive or negative because that unspoken symbiotic relationship is not there anymore. And this gamble ends up being done because their size is so big that even if the feedback is negative, they still feel like they get a lot in return by exposure because some people in their audiences might be watching and still want to give it a shot despite what the streamer says. Case in point, Asmongold. Asmongold got a review code for Assassin's Creed Shadows. He roasted the game and covered the controversies before it released. There's absolutely zero shot that Ubisoft was banking on him enjoying the game. However, there's a certain influencer threshold that if you cross it in terms of popularity, it doesn't even matter to the company if you like the product or not. They still believe that there's benefit in having you play it. It's rare though. Most influencers are smaller and that's what keeps their little symbiotic relationship going. And nothing shows that better than what we just saw with Mixtape earlier this month. I covered the situation in full, plus I reviewed the game, so I'm not going to be getting into it here. You guys can check out those videos, they are right there. But needless to say, the game journos and influencers did their best to push this game out as much as possible, to the point of making it look astroturfed. The reviews for the game were glowing. Oh my goodness, nobody had ever played something like this before. Loads of perfect scores for a game where there's barely any game. It was the first perfect 10 out of 10 score from IGN this year, in a year that already had quite a few surprises. The written review was packaged with whimsical nothings and straight up inconsistencies and borderline lies that I even covered in my review. Influencers were getting sent early packages with not just the game, but contents akin to what you'd get in a collector's edition. In fact, forget about collector's edition, it had more stuff in there. All this massive effort and money in the background being invested into making the game look super popular and brilliant while simultaneously pretending like it was this indie game from a small team in Australia, except it was funded and backed by big money. And honestly, this is what always happens, even if it's at a smaller degree or at a degree where it's not as noticeable as it was with Mixtape. For example, if you do this for a game like 007, it's not going to be as noticeable because naturally 007 is going to have a lot of interest going for it. But with Mixtape, it was crazy because it's like, why is everybody creaming their shorts over this relatively unknown game? So when we talk about these types of effects that game developers have had to suffer when the influencer sphere took off, we really can't leave publishers out of the conversation because influencers don't end up doing anything that publishers didn't want them to.
So now you're thinking about your game the way we used to think about interviews. When you went into an interview, you're like, okay, I gotta have some sound bites ready so that, you know, when I get quoted, I want to make sure the sound bite's quoted. Now it's like, what part of our game would make good clips for influencers to show?
This is a damn shame, honestly. I mean, it's okay, it's not like the end of the world. The mindset of having a few big moments to show in a trailer is perfectly fine. I mean, it's encouraged, it's a trailer. I think the bigger problem is not the concept of doing this, it's the personality of the influencers. They're always hyped up, and so you're supposed to put garbage in your game that feeds into that kind of thing. Hyper excitement, it drives developers to become afraid of quietness or afraid of slow-paced games. Big publishers don't even bother with funding the types of genres that I miss playing the most. Stuff like immersive sims like Prey or stealth games, because these are games where, well, the excitement just doesn't come from explosions or big chases or whatever. It comes from exploring a level, learning things, figuring out ways to solve a puzzle, or get into a locked room that you can't find a way in. Or for example, you finish the game and then you replay it, but you do it this time with new self-imposed challenges like not getting seen or not using powers like in the case of Dishonored for example, or doing it with different options or exploring alternatives. There's some games that publishers don't even want to think about putting money into now, and part of it is probably this, and another big part of it is the industry outgrowing itself to the point where games must have mass appeal to generate as much money as possible. So it's like, oh, immersive sims do not have the capability, the amount of audience necessary to generate 5 million copies sold on day one? Well, then I'm just not going to make that game. We're not going to fund that game. No, we're not going to fund that. No, we're not going to fund that. Let's try to go for an extraction shooter instead. I hear the kids are really into the extraction shooters. Let's just go back to the goddamn frame of Valinor. There we go. There we go. That's it. This is how I feel, fellas. This is it. It's never going to get better.
And now we're in the 2020s, and many gamers don't even look to influencers for reviews. They look to influencers to be told how to think about the games. So people don't form opinions from the online video, they're handed an opinion from the online channel they're watching. What this means is I've seen reviews go from, this game has less combat and more puzzles and dialogues for you to interact with than this other game, to, this game is stupid and slow paced and made for casuals, I think you should skip it. That's a huge difference in how games are presented, but more people are going for that latter. They're like, I don't have time, there's too many games, just tell me whether I should buy it, tell me if it's for me. So they find someone they just like, and then that person's opinion becomes their opinion.
And there it is, the infamous quote that the game journalist took to frame it in a negative way that goes against content creators because they're losing the rat race. But let me first play this next clip so we can take something else into context.
This has a positive side. It's easy to find someone who sides with your preferences and therefore is a good guide for you finding new games. And I've talked about that. That's how I look for game reviewers myself. I look at their reviews for games I already know. If they liked the ones I liked and didn't like the ones I didn't like, then I will trust them going forward on reviews of games that I haven't played yet. But the negative to this is more and more people seem to be abdicating their own judgment to that of people they see online. It's like, I don't want to think about it, you tell me what I should think about it.
This is why I can't get mad at this dude, and it sucks that Dexerto framed that shit in a hostile way that almost shames people for watching content creators instead of showing the full context of his quote. What this ends up causing is people hating Tim Cain for no reason when really, all there is to be had with this dude here and there are disagreements. Not a, oh fuck this guy, he's just a salty game developer who is salty that nobody plays his games, he's defending the corrupt industry, like, he gets it. He does the same thing. He has a bias towards which content creators he watches to get his reviews or suggestions. Everyone does. This is very normal. If your tastes align, you stick around until they give an ultimate dogshit take. Then you leave and you go watch someone else.
Mixtape is different. It's not feeling its way through confusion, and there's no awkwardness to it. It's a dreamy, romanticized rendition of youth at the inflection point before adolescence. It's a suburban American fairy tale where the greatest struggle a young person...
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to completely erase that last thing that he said from my head because it was just stupid, the whole thing where people are just coming in, rushing like, hey man, shut up about the details, I don't have time, just tell me if I should buy it or not. By all means, I'm relatively new in the content creation game, but I never had this shit happen to me, and I don't think it's the case. Most people want to watch content. If a game is good, people want to hear why, and maybe even get the game presented in a creative or entertaining way. And if a game is bad, people want to watch someone tear it into pieces in a lengthy video, not a minute-long TikTok slop. What is accurate, however, is what he said about how a lot of people want to be told what to think, or worse than that, is the people who want to have their biases confirmed by the content creator. This is something that the Fallout community suffers from a lot, which is why when Dexerto's post blew up, it got a bunch of people from their side riled up, coming out like, yeah, it's ridiculous, all these negative grifters, man, without realizing that that shit applies directly to them as well. In fact, it applies better to them than the others. We have a massive problem with toxic positivity in the games industry, not just in, by the way, not just the games industry either. Talking about shows, Disney, Amazon's Fallout, of course, so on and so forth. It's not just present in studios where it results in games like Concord because nobody wants to speak up and be negative in the studio, but also in the fandom space. Just look at what has been happening over the last 5 months with Highguard, Marathon, and Mixtape, and for years now in the Fallout/Bethesda community. Being negative gets you immediately labeled as a grifter or a loser because, oh my god, why can't you just enjoy things? Or because, oh my god, you are so weird, why do you want this game to fail? I'm so sick and tired of these people constantly getting in the way of healthy discourse. In their minds, healthy discourse is to eat the slop and beg for more, even if the quality of the games are in decline. See, they're happy, but they're not seeing everybody else who's leaving. And it only gets worse game after game after game. And that's not to mention when the games are things that nobody asked for or that shouldn't even succeed, like Fallout 76. Why would I want a live service Fallout to succeed? So that Bethesda can go ahead and make another one? What am I, stupid? Marathon also comes to mind here. It's like, why should I want Marathon to succeed when a trend-chasing extraction shooter was the last thing that should be expected from Bungie and Sony? I can't speak with the same fire when it comes to Highguard. I generally did not have a problem with the game's existence. However, obviously, I thought the game sucked and needed a major reworking to be more successful, so of course, I'm also going to point that out and criticize it. And of course, I also went against the people who were trying to obfuscate the discourse around Highguard by saying that its failure was because of haters online and toxic gamers. Hate didn't kill Highguard. Mismanagement did. Feel free to go down my Highguard rabbit hole, it's all available here on the channel. And in Fallout's case, we all see Bethesda's massive decline in quality, we also see the total disregard for the lore and the continuity in the Fallout show, which isn't just a little side thing made by Amazon. This shit is guided by Bethesda and is set to become the new canon where future games will draw from, but in all these cases, calling any of these things out is bad. It makes you a grifter. It's unhealthy discourse. Unhealthy discourse, my ass. This is what's healthy. You have to call these things out. If things don't get better, they're going to get buried. We gotta vote with our wallets and get these companies to respect their own franchises and IPs because for some reason, they stopped caring. Honestly, at the end of the day, it shouldn't even be about whether it's positive or negative. It should be about what is correct. Discussion should be encouraged, but instead it's demonized by those who don't want to think, who don't want to have their ideas challenged, by those who just want to be either told what to think, or again, in my opinion, what this is really about, by those who want to have their biases confirmed by big content creators. And oh my god, there's scores of these cockroaches in the Fallout community. They'll defend their delusional viewpoints so strongly that it almost becomes like an ideology. In fact, many of them are tainted by ideology. There's a whole group of cockroaches who want Fallout to be an anti-capitalist franchise, a massive, internationally popular, multi-billion-dollar franchise to be a symbol that pushes their personal deluded political views. Again, they don't view Fallout as anti-capitalist, they want Fallout to be anti-capitalist. Very important distinction because when Tim Cain was asked whether Fallout was anti-capitalist or not, he said no. That was never a point of it when they were making the games that birthed the franchise, nor a point when they were making Fallout New Vegas. And as a response, these morons just told him that he was wrong. Yes, these retard Redditors who want their opinions to be asserted by higher authorities, be them content creators or even the creators themselves, just told one of the very creators of Fallout who was there on day one making the damn thing that he was wrong about his own fucking franchise. Far be it from me to not admit that there is bias on the other side too, far be it from me to sit here and pretend like the opposition who criticizes Bethesda religiously is perfect and could never fail, but in my opinion both of these instances are incomparable. One deals with data. They'll put together a 2-hour-long video pointing at the game and going through mechanical problems, design problems, and lay out the script and lore book to lay out where the inconsistencies are, where the writing problems are, etc, 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 to which you are free to respond with your own 2-hour-long video doing the exact same thing but in reverse, letting the audience decide on who's making more sense. The the other deals with bullshit. They'll put together a 2-hour-long video talking about how objectivity doesn't exist, so everything is subjective, everything is up to interpretation, and based on their ideological biases, this is the objective, sorry, I meant acceptable way to judge the game or the show or whatever else, and if you don't agree, then you're just another grifter to be ignored. Outside of this, I've also seen these motherfuckers go into politics, literally bringing up Marxism and shit to prove their fallout points to be correct. I mean, what even is this? What do we even do with this? It's like, hey guys, I think Mr. House would never do that. This show doesn't even understand its own characters. According to the Communist Manifesto, page 23, line 12, the show is actually beautifully written. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here? Let's continue though, we're almost done here, fellas.
And I see that sometimes on this channel when I get multiple nearly identical comments from people, and I realize they're just quoting an online influencer. Sometimes it's a meme, but more often it's, oh, this influencer person said this thing about this, and now they're just quoting without any attribution in a comment. Sometimes even when it doesn't apply, which just makes me go, are they understanding why the person said that?
I totally get this point. I've had some similar comments on my videos where people are like, no, you're wrong, you should watch XX Booty Hunter's video on the game, but I don't think this is inherently a bad thing either. Look, at the end of the day, we're fucking content creators, right? It's our job to be out here analyzing media at a deeper level, or at least those who do. It's normal that some level of thinking is going to be outsourced to us, because again, it's what we do. And if it wasn't this way, then there wouldn't be any points to making videos like these. Like, we'd have no function. So it's normal to default to a guy who made a bunch of hours of analysis of a game and say, hey, you should check out this video because it explains this thing very well. People shouldn't be expected to think super deeply about media that they enjoy. If they do, that's great, they'll get more value out of it, but they don't have to. And sometimes it's nice to just kick back and watch a video from someone who did breaking it down. Sometimes it's even normal for us to really get into the lore of a game or whatever and then forget. I've done this before. I used to be really into Elder Scrolls lore. I've forgotten a lot of it by now, and if someone put out a really quality series of lore, I would watch it without a problem. My only objection to this is related to what's correct. Like again, if I say Fallout isn't an anti-capitalist game and you say no, actually yes it is, check out this Soy Boy's 10-hour video on it, I'm just not going to care, because the creator of the game already made a 10-minute video explaining exactly why it's not, in a concise and unbiased manner.
But other reactions I see happening in the industry because of this trend is designers have become really obsessed with labeling their game. It's not enough to say I have an RPG. Is it an action RPG? Does it have an open world? Is this going to be controversial if I talk about this topic? They really want to know what the labels are on their games. And so do you guys. You guys ask these questions. Does it have this content? You know, is it hub and spoke version of a game? As if I can't think of a game that I hated because it was open world versus hub and spoke. I love both of them, and a well-made game can be done in both of them.
I got nothing here, fellas. I think this is a totally normal thing too, and I don't know if he's noting it just as a factoid where it's like, hey, this happened, or as a negative. I think this is a normal consequence of there being more games, and especially of games getting more expensive. People want more details so they don't end up wasting money on something that they won't enjoy. I can understand that there's negative effects to this to an extent because it locks developers into a box, and then there can be big blowbacks to this because people are genuinely stupid sometimes. For example, when Crimson Desert came out, everyone was trying to figure out what the game was by using other games as examples, and this was a disaster because there really is no game like Crimson Desert. What there is various games that have some parts of them in Crimson Desert, but so many people were defaulting to comparing it to Witcher 3 that it caused a massive shock to these players going into it thinking that that was going to be it until they got their hands on it. And this is the part of the video where it's tough, because as I said earlier, I'd like to believe that that this thing where there's armies of idiots who need to be spoon-fed their reviews now, actually where it's not even a review that they want, they just want a 1-minute short saying, yes, buy the game, you're going to enjoy it, it's like Zelda or whatever. I don't want to believe that this is real, right? I don't want to believe that there's a big chunk of these types of people, but I did get legitimately dumbfounded back in March when I was covering the Crimson Desert reception, because there were generally people out there who weren't even checking online whether they'd like it or not. They were just buying it and getting mad because it wasn't Witcher 3, or because the puzzles were too difficult, or because the moment-to-moment was too unconventional with too many mechanics and shit to do. It was a very big clash with reality for me, where it made me understand that actually there are very strange people out there who consume games and games media in a very strange way. But I still think it's a minority, because at the end of the day, the Crimson Desert drama ended very early. The salt mines were closed very soon after the video was posted. I couldn't even get a goddamn sequel, man. I understand that being too locked into labels can be bad because it prevents experimentation, and it also gets people used to not knowing how to talk about games. Even I'm a bit of a victim of this, because we're so used to saying, oh, this game is a insert label here, and it's kind of like this other game called insert game here. It eases communication with the audience when you can give them a reference point, but then you get thrown a curveball like Titanfall, and it's a bit harder to describe because what is it? Is it an immersive sim? Yes, but not really. Is it an RPG? Honestly, not at all, but it's so easy to be like, oh, it's British Fallout, even though, again, it's not an RPG. But at the same time, there's various factions that you can join. You can lie, you can kind of be nutty, you can be a strict military guy, so in a way, it does have some roleplay, and so there you go, it can be annoying to talk about it. Same thing happens with Hell Is Us. So I get it, but in my view, the way to make a solution out of this is to simply do your best to reframe your video, which is the approach that I took for Metal Garden, where I didn't tell you guys what kind of genre it is, I didn't go into that part of it, I didn't try to describe it because it's pointless. I just presented the game to you. Only downside is that when I do it this kind of way, it's difficult to not spoil the story, but honestly it felt fine. Some people just said, hey Dez, I'm going to dip out right now and play the game myself because it sounds interesting, then I'll come back later and continue the video, which is perfectly fine.
But this is what a lot of designers think about now when they're putting a game together. They also wonder how influencers will react. If there's an influencer who really likes a lot of the previous games made by you or made at the company you made, you may be putting in a feature and think, is he gonna like this? Is she gonna comment about this nicely? It's probably not a healthy way of designing a game, but I've seen people talk about it. It's gone from how should I make this instead of how do I want to make this. And I don't think that's a good way to make games. I'm not doing this, but many people, you know, gamers and developers alike, they want me to. They want me to. When they say, Tim, you got to listen to us. You and the other devs aren't listening to me. That's not you telling me to make the game I want to make. That's you telling me to make the game you want to make. And that got to a head when I talked about Fallout and whether it's about capitalism, and everybody told me I'm wrong, that it is about capitalism. I'm like, okay, this game is, it's not what I intended, but you guys want it to be what you want it to be. So it's weird when you then turn around and say, well, go ahead and do what you want, but it's not, it better be what we want.
I let that one play a little bit longer because, yeah, I get his frustration, and there's not going to be an easy answer here. There's no uniform answer. There are simply game developers that people trust implicitly while making their games, and then there are game developers that have lost that trust, and so people keep nagging at them. That's why there's no easy answer here, or no direct one at least. You just gotta use your brain and take it case by case. You gotta have a studio that is open to people's criticism and that isn't drowning itself in toxic positivity or some other kind of hostile environment where they can't freely express concerns or listen to their community. There's also an issue where game developers mistake who their community is by the loudest, dumbest fucking morons in it. For example, it's ridiculous that Redditors were arguing that Fallout is and should continue to be some dogshit anti-capitalist drivel. I would tell those lobotomites to go kick rocks, but now let's say that you have another crowd telling you that Fallout 76 is a dogshit idea and they want a proper single-player Fallout game. Or more similarly, let's say that you've got a crowd telling you to stick to the lore and the canon and stop changing things. I don't know, maybe you should listen to them, because at least one of these is related to game content and the other is related to politics. But for some reason, modern developers cannot help but do the opposite these days. They think politics are the thing to go for when it comes to making their games appealing. And so instead of catering to the 99% of people who just want to play a goddamn game, they go for the 1% who want bullshit in the game to represent them politically. Then people complain and they get to Pikachu surprised meme where it's like, why are gamers being mean to us? We're just making a video game. No, you're up. And this is a big one. With politics creeping and settling into gaming, too many studios sold out, making stupid decisions that defy sense just to be able to appease to activists in the industry and unhinged groups online by being inclusive of their politics. Also, there's other motivations like financial stuff with the ESG, but we're not going to go down that road right now. These morons are the same obsessive types who need Fallout to be anti-capitalist. Literally nothing there about whether it would make the story better or the games better. No, not at all. They just want Fallout to be a powerful, high-value symbol of their ideology. And so this is where me and Tim are sort of at odds, in a way, because in a general sort of sense, Tim thinks that it's stupid, or at least he thinks that it's bad, that game developers are being told to, hey, listen and do what we want, rather than making the games that they dream to make. But the reality is that the industry is just not where it was back when Tim was younger. The industry is no longer packed with passionate nerds like him. It's been corrupted by greed and sadly captured by political activist types, at least at a high level. And he actually should know this more or less because in his former studio, Obsidian, they had a nutcase called Matt Hansen who went on a full rant about how Avowed was woke, and it was deliberately so to piss off the right-wing players. We naturally don't want this. If the idea of modern game developers is to make ideological garbage that gets in the way of escapism, which is an objectively better thing to focus on when making games than goddamn boring-ass divisive politics pumped in by an obnoxious moron who can't detach his work from his ideology and is on a personal vendetta, then of course we're going to be like, hey, listen and do what we want. But in this case, what we want isn't really anything unreasonable or defying. We don't want developers to not have creative freedom. In fact, creative freedom is what we often fight for. Freedom to create whatever stories you want, character designs you want, dialogue styles you want, etc. without bending over to ideological influences. In a way, what we want is a return of the old days. We don't want to cage game development. In many ways, this is a reaction to those who are trying to cage it themselves by replacing developers like Tim with ideologically captured nutcases and brute-forcing useless sensitivity consultants who censor content and make antithetical decisions. And of course, when it comes to monetization, we're also very noisy, and in that case, it's even easier to explain why we want to be listened to. It's because we don't want to get scammed. I'd say Tim would understand that one very easily.
I'm curious now because it's 2026 and I have no idea what the 2030s are going to be like. I'm concerned it will go one of two ways because the pendulum always swings. Either things are going to become even more tightly controlled in bubbles, which means people will stick to this one influencer or this tiny group of influencers and all of their thoughts will be guided by these people. Or maybe the next generation is going to get tired of that. Get tired of all the labeling and tired of all the placing things in a box. I've defined a box and this game is in this box and I'm not going to view it any other way. I'm curious where that goes. The internet basically allows the pendulum like that to swing really far and really fast. So I don't know where the 2030s are going to go, but that's what's happened with game design and online influencers and social media over about the last 45 years. Anyway, Padoni Rosso, that was a good question. I hope you liked my answer.
And that brings us to the end of the video. I obviously don't know how the 2030s are going to look like, but I'll add a thing or two here. So number one, I don't think things have swung in terms of game coverage. I think they followed a pretty straight line. Games media used to do the job, their inadequacy and the introduction of the internet gave rise to YouTubers and later influencers to be the most heard voices in gaming. I don't think this aspect is going to swing back at all. I don't see games media getting any better because they completely lost themselves. At first it was a question of ethics, but since then games media has become just another tool when it comes to the rise of politics and ideology in the industry. That's what these outlets do now. They don't even give a shit about games. I don't wish ill on anyone, but something that Tim Cain should have experienced as a wake-up call to this is the type of thing that happened to games like Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong, or for example what's happening right now with Lords of the Fallen 2, where studios that generally listen to their players are getting demonized by games media for not following their strict ideological guidelines. They're labeling the studio as right-wing, and that shit is just insane. They're completely oppositional to us, so forget about it. The pendulum is not going to swing like that. The better question though is, number two, what will game companies do? Will they keep sending early copies to influencers and content creators? Will they stop? Will their games in general get better? Will it all just keep getting worse? I don't know. In terms of what people watch, I think they'll just flock to whichever content creators suit them better, but the influencer sphere is probably never going to go anywhere because normies are never going to go anywhere. There's always going to be more normies, and normies, they don't know what the fuck is going on in the backseat, okay? They don't know what's, in the backstage. All this that we discussed here today, they don't know, they don't care, they don't even know who the f Tim Cain is. They just open up YouTube, they see a guy with a hat showing the game, the new game that they heard about, and it's like, hey guys, this is a brand new game. It's Call of Duty Advanced Warfare 59. It's great. It makes my head pop out of my head. And then they're like, okay, fuck it, let me buy that game. So for as long as normies exist, the influencer sphere is going to exist too. And even in a dark, disgusting future where we own nothing and we're having to pay a subscription to play our games, I still see content creators on YouTube having a job, because then time becomes a commodity. Do I want to waste my subscription playing game A, game B, or game C? Tune in to the Decembro show to find out which are more worth your time. See, there you go. Number 3 is the cool one though, indie games. Because if the industry keeps getting worse and worse and worse, they are going to be eaten alive by the smaller indie and AA side of the industry. And these are the places where these labels aren't as prominent as they are in AAA. Game ideas flow more akin to how I imagine they flowed back in the days that Tim reminisces about, where people just kinda experiment with different genres mixed together. Eventually though, I think it'll all fall into labels again, like it's just natural. Humans love fucking labels, okay? Oh, we love to LARP like, I'm unique. I'm a free spirit. I don't subscribe to any labels. I am an individual. I am both punk rock and orderly. I can both party hard out in the nightclubs getting wasted or stay in cuddled up on the couch watching Lord of the Rings. I am a loose cannon. You never know what to expect. But really, at the end of the day, every goddamn Karen that does a dialogue like that, every one of us, really, every single one of us, we all know that when we go to the supermarket, we are reading those labels to know what flavor of yogurt we're getting or what the hell is in the can that we're looking at. We just gotta know. We can't help it. We might take a random one once or twice for fun, like to feel adventurous, right? I wonder if I like this weird taste of bubblegum. But we all want to know what the fuck we're buying. So labels are doomed to return to us, fellas. I'm sorry to say, especially to Tim, because when Tim talks about labels, he looks so sad. He looks like he's ready to go to Valinor. So I'm sorry, Tim. Yeah, labels are probably going to keep existing. I mean, look at the video, look at this video right now. You go down to the description, guess what's on the description? There's hashtags, because we gotta label our videos in order to fucking help with the algorithm or whatever. At least that's what I heard. But anyway, that brings us to the closing of the video. Sorry for the scattered thoughts and the lazy editing. It's mostly just a fun end of the month response. I haven't done one of these in a long while, and this was a nice nice chill one where I don't even have to get mad at some disingenuous asshole, and also got to talk about some stuff that I postponed from earlier this month. So thank you all very much for watching, fellas. Huge thanks if you stayed this long. I'm sorry if it was boring. Like the video if you enjoyed it, dislike it if you didn't. Let me know your thoughts below. Any suggestions that you have, note them down below. I'm always open to consideration. And yeah, consider subscribing too, because please. Either way, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.